Imagine waking up at like 2.18 in the morning.
Oh, nothing good ever happens at 2 a.m.
Right. So you're in bed and you hear this sound, just these soft, deliberate dragging noises.
Ugh, horrifying.
Yeah, just this faint scratching moving really slowly across the drywall right above your bed.
So immediately your brain is trying to rationalize it.
Exactly. You reach for your phone, you turn on the flashlight and aim it at the ceiling. You're probably expecting to see, I don't know, a water stain or maybe a rat grate that's come loose.
Something normal, something you can fix.
Right. But instead, the beam hits a woman.
Wow.
And she isn't standing on the floor. She is crawling flat against your ceiling like a spider.
Just completely defying physics.
Yeah. She's barefoot. Her long, dark hair is hanging down toward you. And she is smiling.
That is just deeply unsettling.
It really is.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. What's more terrifying? Is it the fact that she's up there totally defying gravity, or the fact that when you call the police, they will look you dead in the eye and tell you it was just a bad dream?
And that tension right there, that tension between an impossible biological reality and the absolute refusal of human institutions to accept it, that is exactly what we are dissecting today on this deep dive.
Yeah, because the source material we've got is just massive.
We have a whole stack of official reports, witness testimonies, and crucially, leaked security footage concerning the events at Ashdown Heights.
And we're not just breaking down a bizarre sequence of intrusions here.
No, not at all. We are looking at a fundamental collision between human architecture and a terrifying anomaly that frankly breaks every known law of human anatomy.
The case files on Ashdown Heights are just completely consuming. I mean, it reads like this gritty, evidence-based true crime investigation that just slowly decays into a biological nightmare.
It really does.
So the incident I just described to you, that was apartment 12B.
Right, the logical starting point.
Exactly. A college student named Priya Shah called building security. And she was screaming so violently that the dispatcher actually logged it as an active physical assault.
Because what else would prompt that level of terror?
Exactly. But when the police finally breach her apartment, there's no attacker.
Nothing.
They just find Priya barricaded inside her bathroom. She's clutching a kitchen knife, totally in a state of clinical shock.
And she only had one thing to say, right?
Yeah, she just kept repeating one sentence over and over. She was upside down.
And the police response to Priya's sensory experience is just a textbook case of institutional denial.
Oh, 100%.
They wrote off as sleep paralysis or, extreme exhaustion and anxiety attack all before the ink on their incident report was even dry.
They just completely dismissed it.
Because to a responding officer, accepting that a human being was crawling on a ceiling well, it means accepting that gravity and anatomy have simply ceased to function in apartment 12B.
Which is a terrifying thought.
It is. And the human brain, especially within rigid bureaucratic systems, will aggressively reject any data that shatters its worldview.
Okay, let's unpack this, because it reminds me so much of medical gaslighting.
Oh, that's an interesting comparison.
Think about it. When a patient goes to a doctor with a genuine, baffling physical anomaly, like invisible illness or chronic pain, what happens?
Usually they struggle to get a diagnosis.
Right. If the symptoms don't perfectly align with the diagnostic textbook, the doctor often just brushes it off as a psychological issue.
It's all in your head.
Exactly. The logic is basically, your symptoms don't fit my established rules, therefore the problem must be your mind. And the building management at Ashdown Heights weaponized that exact same cognitive dissonance.
Because it wasn't just Priya.
No. Over the next 2 weeks, 14 more residents report the exact same phenomenon. 14.
That is a staggering number for this kind of report.
Right. A silent, ceiling-crawling figure appearing after midnight. And what does management do? They draft a memo blaming internet hysteria.
What's fascinating here is the sheer statistical weight of the data that management actively chose to ignore.
Yeah, they just swept it under the rug.
Mass hysteria is a documented sociological phenomenon, sure, but it acts like a game of telephone.
It changes as it spreads.
Exactly. It morphs. It takes on the subjective cultural fears of the individual. So one person might report seeing a shadow, another sees a religious figure, another sees an alien.
But these weren't different.
No, these 14 reports were rigidly, terrifyingly consistent. 14 independent witnesses reporting identical biomechanical impossibilities.
Like the limbs bending the wrong way.
Right, limbs bending in ways that completely defy a calcium-based skeleton. The absolute silence of the movements, the the fixed, stretching smile.
It's too specific.
From a purely analytical standpoint, you just do not get that level of identical mechanical detail in a psychogenic illness.
But you know, those subjective witness testimonies, the easily dismissed panic of sleepy tenants, that ultimately gives way to objective, undeniable proof.
Because cameras don't have cognitive dissonance.
Exactly. When human eyes aren't trusted, the camera becomes the ultimate arbiter of truth.
And that brings us to Marcus Hill.
Yes, the overnight security guard. He's working the desk at 3:11 a.m., just scanning the feeds, and he notices movement in hallway C on the 14th floor.
Now, initially, he just assumes the camera lens is distorted.
Which is fair. But then the resolution sharpens, and the woman is there.
Right out in the open.
She is clinging upside down above the fluorescent hallway lights, just moving slowly on all fours.
And the geometry of her movement is what causes this visceral, awful reaction when you see the reports.
It's so unnatural.
She is crawling away from the camera, down the length of the hall, but her head is twisted unnaturally backward.
Staring directly into the lens.
Less just staring.
And the footage captures something that completely obliterates any remaining skepticism from anyone who views the raw file.
The physical transformation.
Right. While she's clinging to the ceiling, every bone in her body begins to rotate.
And it's not silent.
No. There are loud, wet cracking sounds. They were audible even through those cheap, muted security microphones.
Unbelievable.
Her arms bend backward first, then her legs, then her spine.
So her entire body reverses direction without her having to actually turn her torso around.
Exactly. She is suddenly crawling toward the camera head first, with all her joints twisted completely backward.
It's a total inversion of the skeletal structure. And, you know, when police administration reviewed Marcus's footage the next morning, they actually opened an investigation into elaborate digital tampering.
They refused to believe it.
They would literally rather believe in a highly coordinated, technologically advanced video hoax perpetuated by a minimum wage security guard than accept the biomechanical reality captured on that tape.
But the tampering theory totally falls apart, like 30 minutes later on a different floor.
The vent footage.
Yes. The camera outside apartment 9A catches a 6-second clip that changes the entire trajectory of the investigation.
It's the most damning piece of evidence.
The heavy metal vent cover in the hallway bulges out. Pale fingers emerge from the grate. Then an arm follows, bending sharply in directions human bones physically cannot move without shattering.
It's impossible.
This woman silently squeezes her entire body into a ventilation shaft barely large enough for a toddler.
Just folding unnaturally.
Yeah, it's as if the bones inside her they no longer mattered.
And the terrifying coda to that footage is what happens to the tenant inside 9A.
They disappear that same night. No blood, no broken locks on the door, just fresh scratch marks on the ceiling.
This specific vent footage is what brings Detective Lena Brooks into the picture.
Finally, someone competent.
Truly. She becomes the first institutional figure to actually practice critical thinking rather than cognitive avoidance.
Which is so refreshing.
She analyzes the raw data, the physical impossibility of that 6-second vent video, combined with the total lack of forced entry, and she chooses to face the anomaly head-on.
She actually looks at the facts.
And she also spots a detail everyone else's brain just glossed over to protect themselves.
Oh, the blinking thing.
Yes. Across all the footage, through all the twisting and inverted crawling, the woman never blinks. Not a single time.
Wait, I have to push back on the physics of this for a second.
Sure, let's get into it.
If human bones physically cannot fold like that without catastrophic fracturing of the skeletal structure, what exactly are we looking at here?
It's the ultimate question.
Like, are we looking at a mutated, extreme case of hypermobility? Or are we looking at an organism with a total lack of a standard skeletal system?
What's your theory?
Well, watching her go into that vent instantly reminds me of an octopus. Think about how an octopus can squeeze its entire massive body through a hole the size of a quarter.
Right, because of their anatomy.
It can do that because the only rigid, hard part of its anatomy is its beak. Everything else is completely malleable.
That is an incredibly astute analogy, and it cuts right to the core of the mechanical problem Detective Brooks was trying to solve.
So the physics kind of line up.
Yes. The human body relies on a rigid, calcium-based framework. Our muscles act as cables pulling against the solid levers of our bones.
So without bones, we're nothing.
Without bones, a standard human is effectively a puddle on the floor. But if we look at the octopus, as you mentioned, we see a biological workaround. It's called muscular hydrostats.
Muscular hydrostats, okay.
Like an elephant's trunk or an octopus's tentacle, these structures use the incompressible nature of fluid within muscle tissue to create a temporary shifting skeleton.
Oh, wow.
They flex certain muscles to create instantaneous rigidity, giving other muscles something to pull against.
That is wild.
So the vent footage strongly suggests a biological entity utilizing a similar hydrostat system, completely unconstrained by fixed bones.
Which makes them the ultimate infiltrator for a man-made structure.
Precisely.
And the situation escalates rapidly. I mean, it shifts from an isolated, inexplicable freak occurrence into a full-on organized invasion.
The auditory encounters are what really show that shift.
Lena starts interviewing the remaining residents, and the things they describe are just chilling. It's no longer just scratching in the vents.
No, it's much closer.
It's the sound of heavy breathing behind the drywall. And one elderly resident wakes up completely paralyzed with fear, finding the entity hanging upside down right over her face.
And what does it say?
It just whispers, "Your bones look warm."
That is a deeply unsettling detail, but it provides our first real clue into the creature's biological imperatives.
How so?
It suggests a parasitic or resource-driven motivation regarding human skeletal structures.
Oh, that makes sense. And it's not just stalking and whispering anymore either.
Right.
Another resident watches her crawl across a hallway ceiling for an hour, just dragging her fingernails through the paint, scratching these unrecognizable symbols into the plaster.
And those symbols started appearing everywhere.
Everywhere across the 14th floor. Around elevators, framing vent covers, just etched into the walls.
Now, the immediate police assumption was that these were simple territorial markings.
Like an animal marking its turf.
Exactly, like a predator marking trees in a forest.
But here's where it gets really interesting. What if they aren't just territorial?
Okay, what are you thinking?
Think about the environment. She's moving through a highly complex, three-dimensional man-made structure. What if those symbols are a spatial map of the ventilation system?
A navigational tool.
Right. If we assume a hive intelligence, these markings could be a way to communicate structural weaknesses, blind spots in the camera coverage, and structural safe zones to one another.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the hive mapping theory aligns perfectly with the event that fundamentally broke Ashdown Heights.
The blackout.
The 2:43 a.m. blackout. The power grid fails across the entire building.
Just total darkness.
But the emergency generators kick on a few seconds later, rebooting the security cameras.
And suddenly, the entity is caught on camera on all 14 floors simultaneously.
Right, and Lena goes frame by frame on that reboot footage, analyzing the entities.
What does she find?
She sees different hair lengths, different tattered clothing, different facial structures beneath the hanging hair.
So it wasn't just one.
There was never just one woman crawling through the walls. There are multiple versions of her. A massive infestation had been growing right above their heads.
That is terrifying.
And notice the drastic behavioral shift that occurs immediately after that blackout.
Violence ramps up.
Significantly. Up until that night, tenants were simply disappearing, erased without a trace. But after the blackout, the disappearances stop, and the slaughter begins.
The bodies the police eventually find are so gruesome.
You really are.
Victims are discovered inside their own locked, secured apartments, but they are twisted into these impossible shapes.
Arms bent backward, spines snapped.
Yet jaws dislocated unnaturally wide. The crime scene reports actually describe the victims as looking folded.
Folded.
Like something tried to violently force their rigid bodies through architectural spaces that were way too small for them.
And above every single folded corpse, there are aggressive scratch marks carved into the ceiling.
Right.
That shift from covert abduction to overt slaughter is a crucial tactical indicator.
You think it was planned?
The synchronized blackout wasn't an accident. It was a coordinated signaling mechanism.
Wow.
The shift from taking people to simply folding them and leaving them in their homes suggests the entities no longer felt the need to hide their behavior.
They were just taking over.
They had achieved total dominance of the environment. The building no longer belonged to the human tenants, it belonged to the hive.
And they were actively reshaping the environment and the inhabitants to fit their spatial needs.
Which forces Detective Lena Brooks into a terrifying corner.
Right, because if you have multiple hostile entities claiming a massive apartment complex, you have to find where they're nesting.
You have to find the source.
Every deep dive into a biological mystery eventually requires locating the source. So Lena literally goes underground.
down into the dark.
She rounds up a building maintenance crew, and they pry open the unmapped ventilation tunnels down in the sub-basement.
They push past the standard architectural blueprints, descending into these abandoned corridors that were sealed off during a series of renovations decades ago.
It's so easy to forget how buildings actually function.
Oh, absolutely. We see the clean drywall and the painted ceilings. But behind that facade is a whole secondary world of interstitial spaces.
Like the plenum spaces above drop ceilings.
Right, blind pipe chases, hollow elevator shafts.
We build these massive, hollow concrete structures, seal them off, and we just assume nothing will ever decide to live inside the walls.
But when Lena and the crew get down into those forgotten corridors,
they find the nest.
They do.
The concrete is completely covered in thousands of overlapping fingernail scratches. There are hundreds of tiny tunnels, literally carved by hand through the drywall and plaster.
The sheer effort that would take.
And in the corners of the room, they find carefully stacked, meticulously cleaned piles of human bones.
Just waiting there.
And hanging from the overhead plumbing pipes, the skin.
The physical remnants of the shedding process.
Yeah, long strips of pale, translucent human skin just draped over the hot water pipes like drying fabric.
It's a horrific image.
So what does this all mean?
Well, when Lena shines her flashlight on those stacked bones and the hanging skin, the horrifying truth of the biomechanics finally clicks into place.
She wasn't magically bending her bones when she squeezed into that toddler-sized vent.
She had no bones.
She would shed them.
Exactly. She had forcefully extracted her own skeletal structure.
Just imagine the sheer evolutionary or parasitic mechanics of a creature that literally discards its internal framework just so it can squeeze into the hidden architecture of human building.
It's taking the human form, hollowing it out, and using the building itself as its new protective shell.
It's like a hermit crab using a skyscraper.
It is the ultimate architectural predator. It has adapted to the concrete jungle by becoming entirely fluid within it.
And the violent confrontation that happens next in those tunnels just proves how perfectly adapted this biology is for close-quarters combat.
The confrontation is pure chaos.
Total chaos. They hear these wet, crawling sounds in the dark. One of the maintenance workers screams, dropping his light.
And the woman just unfolds from the concrete ceiling.
She drops down silently, like a spider descending from a web.
But up close, illuminated by the dropped flashlight, the source material notes that her body looked horribly loose.
Yeah, her arms are bending continuously in these sweeping, boneless arcs. Her spine is rippling beneath her pale skin like liquid.
And her face is completely flattened.
The bone structure is gone. It's just compressed inward from spending years dragging herself through tight, narrow ventilation shafts.
But she is still wearing that impossible stretching smile.
Which is just, ugh. The maintenance worker completely panics. He pulls a firearm and opens fire at point-blank range.
He empties the entire magazine.
The bullets hit her right in the chest. But there's no blood spray. There's no staggering back.
Just those wet, cracking noises.
Right. Her body literally bends backward, rippling around the bullet impacts.
This raises an important question about the physics of defense, and specifically the concept of hydrostatic shock.
Why did a lethal kinetic weapon completely fail?
Well, handguns and rifles rely on a very specific biological assumption about the target. They rely on striking vital organs that are anchored and protected by a rigid skeleton.
They assume there are bones.
Exactly. When a bullet hits a standard body, it strikes bone and bends tissue, creating a massive acoustic wave that violently displaces fluid.
That hydrostatic shock.
Right. That shock tears through the anchored organs, disrupting the central nervous system. But without a fixed structure,
It doesn't work.
without bones anchoring the organs in place, the kinetic energy of the bullet doesn't hit a wall, it hits water.
So it just passes through or disperses.
The energy is simply absorbed, dispersed, or completely bypassed by the liquid-like muscular hydrostat system of her flesh.
The bullets were useless because the entity no longer played by the rules of human anatomy.
Precisely.
So she just absorbs the kinetic energy and moves impossibly fast. She scrambles across the walls and the ceiling simultaneously, her limbs twisting in these violent rotational bursts.
And she's smart. She targets the remaining lights.
Plunging the tunnel into pitch darkness, the maintenance crew perishes down there in the dark.
But Lena survives.
Lena only manages to escape because she memorized the tunnel layout beforehand, and she just sprinted blindly for the maintenance ladder, sealing the heavy iron grate behind her.
She escapes, leaving a bloodbath that the city administration simply couldn't ignore or easily explain away.
But they still tried.
The institutions were forced to respond, bringing us back full circle to the architecture of dismissal.
Because human institutions cannot handle a broken reality. The authorities step in, and they immediately seal Ashdown Heights.
They wrap the entire structure in chain link fencing and condemn it.
And the official explanation released to the press. It is a textbook cover-up.
Of course it is.
The official report cited severe structural instability in the foundation and toxic black mold exposure in the ventilation system causing mass hallucinatory events among the tenants.
Mass hallucinatory events. They swept a biological nightmare neatly under the rug of building maintenance issues.
It's the exact same psychological defense mechanism Priya Shah's responding officers used, just scaled up to a municipal level.
Because if the city admits what is actually living in those vents, the implicit trust we all have in our infrastructure collapses.
But the truth always leaks out. Today, Ashdown Heights stands completely empty.
A towering, condemned monolith in the middle of the city.
But the neighbors in the surrounding apartment buildings, they still see things.
Late at night, they report seeing pale figures moving behind the dusty upper windows.
Crawling slowly, upside down, across the ceilings in the dark.
And years later, leaked drone footage proved it.
She or they are still inside, moving through the vents after midnight, searching, bending and unfolding endlessly through spaces no human should ever fit through.
It really forces you to rethink your relationship with the spaces you inhabit.
Think about the vents in your own apartment right now.
You probably assume they are barely wide enough to fit a cat, making you perfectly safe.
We implicitly trust our drywall, our ceilings, our HVAC grates to protect us from the outside world.
But this source material proves that human architecture, the very hollow spaces we build to feel safe, can easily become the perfect, sprawling habitat for something entirely alien.
We want the clean break. We want the easy answer. We want the absolute rules of physics and biology to keep us safe while we sleep.
But the entities at Ashdown Heights prove that sometimes the rules simply do not apply.
Which leaves us with one final, deeply practical concern to consider.
If these entities are actively shedding their skin, meticulously stacking their discarded bones, and multiplying within the enclosed plenum spaces of that condemned building.
What happens when Ashdown Heights simply runs out of room for them to grow?
Where do they go next?
When a hive gets too crowded, it has to swarm.
Something to think about tonight while you're lying in bed.
Listening to the house settle. Wondering what's making that scratching noise above your ceiling. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious and maybe double-check the screws on your air vents.